Welcome to Heart Space Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Anna.
And I'm Candice. This is a podcast dedicated to all things heart-centered. In each episode, we will open our heart space to share embodied experiences, simple tips, and thoughtful prompts for you to live a heart-centered life.
If you are curious about the wisdom of our hearts, if you are ready to embrace deep transformation, this podcast is for you.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any episodes.
From our hearts to yours, Anna and Candice.
Hello, friends. You must have read the title of today's episode and know that we have our teacher, Prasad Rangnekar, on the podcast. His name was casually sprinkled in previous episodes, and we now have the honor of his presence. In this episode, we spoke at length about how yoga supports the role of householders. Who are householders? The path of the seeker, and the importance of a spiritual practice. As always, Prasad has so much wisdom to impart, and he delivers them with clarity and empathy. Be sure to listen to this episode multiple times because the path of yoga asks us to deeply marinate in the teachings of it to flourish as our embodied truth. Also, a quick announcement to our friends in Singapore. We are facilitating a 2-day yogic meditation immersion at Meghalaya Shala on 24th Feb and 2nd March. In this immersion, we will learn how meditation supports our desire to live a heart-centered life. Whether you are a beginner or an experienced meditator, this immersion is designed to enrich your understanding and experience of yogic meditation and eventually create your personal daily practice. Details are in our show notes and on social media. That is all from me now. If you're ready, I invite you to open your heart space to receive this invaluable episode with the dearest Prasad.
Hi, and welcome to another episode. We are thrilled and honored to have Prasad Rangnekar as our special guest on the podcast today. Prasad is a teacher and mentor to both Candice and myself, and his wisdom has greatly influenced both of us. He was one of the first people we knew we wanted to invite to the podcast, so we are sure that this will be a very enriching conversation. If you've been following our previous episodes, you may have already heard Prasad's name mentioned a few times, both by us and by our guests. So today, finally, you'll get to know him a little better. Prasad Rangnekar is yoga educator based in India, with an extensive teaching experience spanning over 28 years across more than 15 countries. He has been a student and practitioner of yoga for the past 38 years, delving into both traditional lineages as well as academic studies, earning a master's degree in philosophy. He is the founder-director of Yoga Prasad Institute and conducts yoga and meditation teacher trainings, mentorship sessions, retreats, and workshops to spread the wisdom of traditional yoga. Welcome, Prasad.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome, the mysterious man from Maharashtra.
Yeah, we are very excited to have you in this conversation today. We wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the theme of studying oneself in spiritual practice. So we hope to talk a little bit more about sadhana and to kick off this conversation, we wanted to speak a little bit more about yoga for householders. And could you lay the grounds for us? What is the goal of yoga and who belongs to this mysterious category of householders?
Oh, householder is not a mysterious category at all. It forms the major chunk of the masses. Not only now, but also in the scriptures. No, in the past, the scriptures mention many times how householder level is the level of sustaining the society. So first, let's see what a householder is. A householder is basically a family person who is married, is responsible to family, has children, is participating in commerce, propagation of species, will have children, interaction with society, basically everything opposite to a hermit.
Yeah.
A hermit would live in a forest or not engage with the society as much or not at all. Like some hermits, sadhus, they will live in the forest or in the cave for decades, for years. They sustain themselves through the raw material or natural resources from the forest. But a householder, the technical term is grihastha, doesn't do that. Grihastha is engaged in socio-economic fabric of the society.
Yeah. So basically, whoever that listens to the podcast now are likely to be, or they are householders.
Yes, majority of us are householders.
Yeah.
If we were sadhus, we would
Not be listening.
not be on the podcast.
Exactly.
I mean, some sadhus do listen, but not so well engaged. And most of modern yoga practitioners are householders. So, in fact, I don't wish to plug it here, but since I remember now, I'll be starting a small course on yoga of householders sometime next month. And it's exactly on this topic because many of our techniques that we practice in modern yoga are derived from the hermit aspect or the hermit lineages.
Yeah.
So it can be difficult to know how can I sustain my family life, enjoy my social interactions, and yet live up to the values of yoga. So this differentiation or clarification needs to be done.
Yeah, I think it's very important because most students who eventually study yoga or joins yoga teacher training, sometimes we get confused that we have to be a certain way in order to live like the yogic principles. And most of the time, the books that we read are then those that are passed down by hermits or sages. And we don't really understand how to integrate that into our modern life with interaction with families, with friends. So very much looking forward to this course that you are doing.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. You know, a lot of scriptures were written by hermits, or, for example, the Hatha Yoga practices that we do are majorly from the hermit lineages. So, and now we've just taken them. It's not that householders cannot do, but some practices are extreme. Many kriyas or many even asanas were done by people who had sheer disregard for their body, for social conventions, and then we've just taken them and not adapted them to our times, and that can be very confusing. Just the other day, I heard somebody was telling me about someone who did a very extreme kriya, shuddhi kriya, and had to be hospitalized. So we need to be a little vigilant as to what we practice and what is the origin of what we practice.
Then how about, so now that we have identified the category of householders, which is majority of us, what is the goal of yoga here for householders then?
The goal of yoga is the same. So basically, the traditional Indian social system consists of four goals of a human person called Purusharthas. The first is getting educated, building your ethical, moral framework, your confidence, your knowledge. The second one, the second quarter is grihast, the household. So after education, after having your degree, you get married, you settle down, as they say. You get married, you have children, you do business. What is called as the phase of artha. Artha means artha and kam. Artha means economics, and kama means productivity, creation, sensuality, and all these things. So the next quarter of your life, the second quarter of your life, you get busy with creating wealth, creating prosperity, forwarding your heredity, and things like that. In the third quarter, you move away from active participation from society to focus more on your spirituality. And in the last quarter, you just move away in complete isolation to fully focus on the spiritual growth or moksha. So all these four stages of a human person's life are aimed ultimately at moksha, that is self-realization. So whichever quarter you take, the brahmacharya, the student phase, the grihastha, the householder phase, the vanaprastha, the forest dwelling isolatory phase, or the sannyasa ashram, all stages, all phases are aimed at moksha, self-realization. So it's not that when you are in the grihastha phase, you're not supposed to work on self-realization. You're still working on it, but not at the expense of complete isolation from the society. We all would love to realize ourselves, but if all took the liberty to move away from the society, there'll be no society.
Yeah.
So even when you are in the householder phase, to a certain extent, not to a major extent, but to a certain extent, you are still working towards your moksha by whatever life gives you or by whatever challenges life throws at you. So the process of working towards moksha is still happening in the grihastha stage. It's not like you go off the radar of spirituality for 25 years and then, come up on the radar again. It's not like that.
Thank you so much. We also wanted this beginning phase of our conversation to ask about your relationship with yoga and how this relationship has developed or strengthened through the years.
That will require an entire podcast. But in a very simple way is, I would say, yoga has empowered me from within. Yoga has made me less anxious, more trusting, and a little more empathetic towards others. In one line, I would say that. Otherwise, there could be long elaboration.
Thank you. One of the themes that we would love to talk with you a little bit, which is the term seeker, seeker on this path of this spiritual seeker. How can we define the ones who seek, and what exactly are we seeking for?
The answer differs because spirituality is extremely subjective. It's asking what is the seeker looking for is like asking, what do you want from life? Answer will be very, very personal. So I am no one to tell you what you should look for in life. I never did that, and I don't do that, don't intend to do that, because everybody has their own free will and they can choose whatever they want to. But in a very generic sense, what a seeker of spirituality through the yogic system is looking at is, from a traditional point of view, a deep and real self-understanding. So from the pre-modern traditional yogic point of view, the seeker does not get into yoga for health benefits, fitness benefits, wellness benefits, therapeutic benefits. No. The reason why ancient yogis got into yoga, the process of yoga, is to answer the existential question, who am I? And to a certain extent find some solace, some calm, some peace in their day-to-day living. That is how yoga is rooted in a very deep and profound pursuit of self-knowing. Now it has become all about fitness and wellness and therapy and things like that, which is okay, but that's the primary level of self-understanding. So I like to stick to the traditional definition of yoga, traditional goal of yoga, the original purpose of yoga, as I call it, which is self-understanding, self-knowledge. In Sanskrit, it's called Atma Jnana. Yes, and this is where the Grihastha, looping back to the question of Grihastha, this is where whatever time of your life, 2 decades, 3 decades that you spend as a householder, and you increase your complexities by getting, by partnering with a person, another human, and creating offsprings and engaging with family. It's basically complicating your karmic bondages.
Yeah.
But why does a grihastha voluntarily do that? The grihastha voluntarily does that to, in modern research methodology terms, I would say, increase the sample size of experiences through which they can literally filter what is true to them, and through the life experiences come closer to understanding themselves. And then in the next phase, the phase of vanaprastha, you have a good 25 years of data set, and then life lessons, and then you sit quietly and you process them. Is how I see it. So yeah, it is extremely important to sit with yourself and find your own purpose and ask yourself, what am I seeking through this path? This is extremely important, because especially in today's times when we are so much glued and hooked to social media and public opinion, we just make other person's purpose our purpose. We just make other person's seeking our seeking. And years go seeking something that does not sit well with you, seeking something that does not feel authentic to you. And then the seeker hits a wall. Why is my pursuit not taking me anywhere? But because it was not your pursuit. It's like you always want to look like someone else. Yeah. You keep changing your looks based on what's hot in the season. In 2022, you look like this celebrity. 2023, you have hairstyle like that celebrity, which is okay. But you will never realize what is it that you want to look as, even at a purely physical level. How should my hair be? How should my poise be? And all that. So it's extremely, extremely important to reflect.
Mm.
Yeah. And even though you mentioned that for householder it's about like 2 to 3 decades life, that's a very generic form of putting the timeline of how most of us would be. But if we never ask the question of who am I or what am I seeking for, it could be just like lifetimes and lifetimes of just running in this self-made maze.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason I said 2-3 decades is because that's what the scriptures say. Scriptures divide a lifetime in 100 years, and then every quarter is 25 years. But since an average lifetime now is not 100 years, we can't really have the luxury to retire at 50
Yeah.
and move to a forest at till 75 and then live alone from 75 to 100 or something like that. I have adjusted that scale according to modern times. So 2 decades, maximum 3 decades is enough. And that's what happens. That's what I keep telling my friends who are in the corporate world, that, or even my relatives or whoever who are in the whole parenting relations and parenting setup. I tell them that nobody tells us to back off. Nobody tells us when to retire. Nobody tells us when to let go of kids and let them be adults. Like if you see in the animal kingdom, every species has fixed tenure of parental care. In humans, we don't have that. First we want children, then we want grandchildren, and then we want great-grandchildren. We just keep wanting from our progenies. We don't know when to step back. Yeah, we want to retire and have a retirement fund, and then after retirement, we are wondering how to invest that retirement fund and what to do with that. So, and I love this model, the traditional model of Purusharthas, because it tells us that, yes, interact with the society, become prosperous, create wealth, create progeny, all is good, but know that in order to find yourself, you'll need to step back a little after a while, which nobody tells us in today's modern consumeristic society.
Yeah, very important. You mentioned, I just remembered a post you shared recently on Yogic FOMO, as you call it. So that's probably what these seekers, or us seekers, get trapped in, trying many various practices, many various spiritual paths. How can we find a guiding light to navigate this journey a little bit more wisely, instead of being pulled from one shiny thing to the other?
See, the less you know yourself, or in other terms, the less clarity you have about yourself, the more you'll depend on what others say. So if you feel that you are kind of changing your narrative of seeking and teaching, first 6 months of 2023, you call yourself this yogi, and the next 6 months of 2023, you call yourself that yogi, and then now in the beginning of 2024, you don't know if you're this yogi or that yogi, so you mix those yogis and make a hybrid of yogi. This is very typical of self-search. I'm not saying this is wrong. It's really like you ask a child, what do you want to be? So one day they'll say, I want to be an air hostess. Other day they'll say, I want to be Miss Universe. Next day they'll say, I want to be a fighter pilot. They are still discovering themselves. So our case as modern yoga seekers is also like that. So what I would suggest, and I have done that personally in my life, is take time to be with yourself, to use your own mind, your processing capabilities, to find what sits well with you and identify with that and carry forward that. And what clarity you generate may not be what necessarily what the popular notions are. That means it requires some sacrifice. Yeah, like if you want to teach, if you have come to a stage, and I know many people have, they've done their asanas, they've done their physicalities, and now they are at this threshold of reducing their physicality as a seeker and as a teacher. As a seeker, they do. They do their asanas, but they're not so obsessed as they were 10 years ago. But now they want to move to the gradual, subtle realms like pranayama, meditation. But there's not much market for that. So then commercial constraints make us stay in the same pool of ideas. So somewhere with clarity should come our ability to sacrifice a few things. So it's a beautiful ethical journey. I want to teach yoga like this. Yeah, but the whole world is teaching yoga like that. So what am I going to miss by not teaching like that? What am I going to gain by teaching like this? So all that needs to be really processed. And that's why I feel yoga students need to be taught how to think instead of how to do. Right? We've been taught how to do. Bend like this, twist like this. What we need to do is teach yoga students, seekers how to think. And this is why something that we miss in modern yogic narrative is that yoga has always been a contemplative culture. Yoga comes from a contemplative culture. It is not much of a culture of practices. Yoga primarily, that's why philosophies have been written. The fact that philosophies have been created, multi-dimensional philosophies you'll find in Indic philosophical systems. The reason is because people were thinking, people were contemplating, people were questioning, people were reflecting. So yogic culture, or the ancient yogic system, or traditional Indian systems of knowledge are contemplative. Means you don't just take things at their face value. You ask, you question, you understand, you debate, you analyze, then you filter, and then if it sits well with you, you take, the others you reject. That's why yoga has grown over time as a body of knowledge too.
Yeah. I think that is also like perhaps one of your intention with the posts that you put out on social media, allowing us to be a little bit more contemplative with information that is all over, saturated, highly saturated, and what sits really well with me that I could have a sense of integrity as well with the information that I receive. Because like you mentioned, like this kind of thresholds where teachers who are maybe 1 or 2 years into teaching, realizing that there are many modalities or there are many practices and techniques to do, and then having the FOMO syndrome and all of that, then it can be quite destabilizing for us. And if we don't know what we want to offer, then we're just following through every other trends.
Absolutely. And it breaks my heart to see, because I interact with so many yoga teachers on a daily basis. Many of them just starting off, and there's so much confusion. And then what happens is you take that confusion personally, and then you feel not good enough.
Yeah.
Then that's the whole cycle of self-denial and self-abuse.
So just drawing into like all of the things that we shared, even beyond a yoga teacher, we first have to be a sincere seeker, a student of yoga. What do you think is like the things that really creates the integrity, the stability for a sincere seeker to walk on this path?
See, integrity comes from clarity, and clarity comes from reflection, from contemplation. Now, reflection needs time. So, time needs to be created. And time cannot be created unless and until you take a step back from the hamster wheel of consumption. If you are completely hooked to looking externally for information about how you should create your integrity, you will create your integrity based on somebody else's opinion. And this is why I'm saying it again, that it's all about stepping back, taking time, not stopping, pausing once in a while to create clarity. If you're, see, from a neurological framework, okay, from a nervous system point of view, to reflect on something needs your nervous system to be out of fight and flight. Incessant consumption is a mark of fight and flight response of your nervous system. If you're consistently scrolling on social media, trying to know how to live your life, in a way, it is fine, but it's incessant, unbridled consumption, which is what people or animals or living beings do under fight and flight. When you're chased by threat, you don't sit and contemplate. You don't sit. If a tiger is chasing you, you will not sit under a tree and reflect on the stripes of the tiger. No, you will run. This is in our current social scene. What happens is our fight and flight makes us hooked to incessant consumption of information, and literally stealing time out of this incessant consumption is a big win. Even if you find 15 minutes every day to just switch off your devices and just sit and ask yourself, it's an exercise in itself. Many people cannot even think. They have lost the ability to think for themselves. Even, like how easily we go to Google for answers.
Yeah.
Back in the day, when somebody asked you a question, you had to think hard to recall. And you'll be like, I knew this. Let me think. Now nobody does that. I knew this. Okay, wait. 0.25 seconds, you have an answer in your device. So, a long answer to your short question. I can give a list of how to create integrity, but the first level of creating integrity is just sit and recognize the need that, yes, there are lots of opinions out there about how you should live and what you should do and what is integrity. But what do I feel? What is integrity according to me? That is number one. And number two will be another, creating trust and confidence and gradually things like that. But first thing is, I would say, just sit, just sit down.
Yeah.
Not just literally, but also figuratively. Just pause, sit, reflect, not overthink. Okay, reflection is completely different than overthinking. Overthinking goes in circles. Reflecting, literally, from a video game imagery, reflection is like you are, breaking down walls and moving further, breaking down walls and moving further. That's what reflection is. Overthinking is just going around in circles and reaching nowhere.
Yeah, I think what it sounds like to me, it's also just really maximizing and exercising this power of the mind rather than allowing the mind and the nervous system to be running by itself,
Constantly influenced by
Yeah.
everything that is around.
in all directions.
Absolutely. We forget that we have something called as free will.
Yeah.
So many people are afraid to express their opinion. So many people feel not confident about their opinion. Many people think, why should I express my opinion? Who even cares? So having opinion is not the issue.
Sounds like what we have all been through.
Yeah, I mean, we have power of mind, free will. We have a nicely developed prefrontal cortex, which gives us rationality. So we need to use all this. We use it, but we use it in some flimsy sense, like, we use our power of reasoning to put ourselves down.
Mm.
Who
Yeah.
is going to read my article? Why should I write?
Yeah.
So our reasoning works, but it works against us.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we need to switch. We need to turn the table.
So we've been talking a lot about contemplating and turning within for answers versus being constantly affected by everything that the world has to offer. And that's also part of developing, coming from being a seeker, spiritual seeker, coming into becoming a student of yoga, a more committed student on this path. How do we develop that studentship on our path? What is needed, or what is crucial to remember, or what to avoid doing on that path?
See, number one, we have to realize that yoga is not just a practice or a philosophy. Yoga is practice plus philosophy plus transformation through practice and philosophy. So it's like you asking somebody, how can I get fit? I cannot get fit by reading a fitness magazine. I have to go to the gym, or I have to do some physical work to get fit. Yoga is like that. And that is why we need to first address ourselves as student practitioners. Nowadays, what happens, we are so tuned into becoming professionals first and practitioners later. Right? It's like somebody hired you for a job of a lifeguard, and now you're like, I should learn swimming. Something like that happens. So what you said is absolutely right. We have to first recognize that my transformation will become the source ground of my teaching. My experiences become my library, my storehouse through which I will distribute my knowledge, my service, my compassion. And to create that storehouse, to keep replenishing that storehouse of understanding, of knowledge, of wisdom, of clarity, you need to keep filling it yourself through your personal practice or sadhana, whatever you call it. That's the first point. Second point is, it is always good to work under the guidance of a teacher. Teacher is someone who has been in similar shoes like you are in. Teacher who has gone through the same kind of confusions and emotions like you. That's why it is easily possible for the teacher to identify with what you're going through. Sometimes the teacher doesn't even have to be told. Third is realizing that you need to put yoga in the center of everything in your life. Yoga is not a recreational pursuit. If right now yoga is number 4 on your list, you should put it on number 1. There are many reasons somebody can counter this statement of mine. But if you counter this statement of mine that I made, that yoga should be in the center of your life, perhaps that person doesn't understand the real meaning of yoga. Yoga, I call yoga as a life science, life skill. I'm not referring to asana. Wherever I have mentioned yoga. I am not referring to asana. If I have to talk about physical practice, I will say asana clear. But what I'm saying here is if you put yoga in the center, means if you put your self-transformation in the center, your process of self-transformation in the center, everything that depends on that center will be held well. It's like you start a business and the person who's funding you has deep pockets. And that person says, you know what? You have 2 years to try out if this business succeeds. Don't worry about money. I have $100 billion. You're like, yeah. So then what happens is you can just forget. You can just forget, oh, will I even get next round of funding? Like the startup people have, always they are worried, will they get funding in the next round of funding? This is how what I feel is if you put your spirituality in the center, your personal life, your emotional life, your social life will balance. So the third point is putting your spirituality, your yoga in the center. And the rest will just happen. If you stick to these 3 points, the rest will find its balance.
Like the groundwork that we have to do on this part.
Mm-hmm.
So you briefly mentioned about spiritual practice, sadhana. What exactly entails like sadhana? What does it mean? And for householders especially, what could a sadhana be like? Because I believe that most of us would think of sadhana as just basically a practice that is on the mat, like coming to do some asana poses, and that's considered done. But what is it actually that is trying to inculcate or to brew and to burn away certain kind of limitations, conditionings that we have? What is the purpose of sadhana?
In a medical terms, I can say that sadhana is the daily medicine that you should take to keep your immunity high.
Nice.
To help you fight against the germs of suffering. Yeah, it's a daily dose of medicine that keeps up your physical and mental resources optimal, because life is not easy. Life is continuously unpredictable, challenging. And without having a ground in something that keeps you steady, it's very difficult to go out there and face life. So in a very, very generic and broad-based understanding, sadhana is anything that keeps you anchored into your mind-body wellness or integrity to help you face the daily ups and downs of life. Now, when you say spiritual sadhana, it gets one more layer of qualification. When you say spiritual sadhana, it means the practice that holds you into your calmness, holds you into your resilience, gives you the strength from a spiritual point of view. You can be like, for example, there are people who, for example, going to the gym and doing your workout every day is also sadhana. But the benefit of that is at the physical level. There are musicians or artists, they will do their practice every day. Pianists and all, they'll play piano 3-4 hours every day. That is also their sadhana. So for us, we say yoga sadhana. Yoga sadhana is whatever spiritual practice you do every day to be in your optimal psychosomatic state, resilient psychosomatic state, to manage dukkha or life suffering. That will be my definition. Now, sadhana is always aimed at sadhya. Sadhya means the goal, and sadhana is the process towards that goal. So whatever your goal is, your sadhana will be that. Right? If you want to be a civil engineer, then don't go and sit in some music school. If you want to be a civil engineer, go to civil engineering college and sit there. So it's like that. Again, because every individual is very, very unique, their sadhana will also be unique to them. It's like medicine. You both go to the doctor and say, doctor, give us the same medicine. The doctor is not going to do that. Your ailment is different. Your ailment is different. Both of you will have different medicines. So to really find a proper sadhana, you will need a teacher who guides you, like a doctor. Yeah, the doctor will say, no, you take this medicine and you take this medicine. Why? Because you have throat pain, you have headache. So medicine is not the same. Yet the doctor will give you some common medicines like vitamin tablets, right? Like generic. Take this, good calcium supplement. Take this B12. Take this D3 supplement. So there are some medicines that will be generic. So there are some generic sadhanas and there are some specific sadhanas. Specific sadhanas you should take from your teacher. Generic sadhana like pranayama. Of course, pranayama can also become, but I'm saying at the very, very basal, first level sadhanas, asana, pranayama, some basic chanting, your japa, journaling, scripture reading, all this the householder can do. These are generic. Let's say I have not found my teacher. What should I do? Do whatever that you can do sustainably over a period of time. Really, whatever. Not everybody has to do asanas. Like in most of India, when they say they do bhakti, they are doing yoga. They are participating in bhakti yoga. So they have their prayers in the morning, then they will go and meditate in the temple every evening when they're coming back from work and things like that. So generic sadhana for householder could be pranayama, some asana, some chanting, some journaling, some dana, distributing, doing seva or charity. All these things are important in a life of a seeker that everybody can do. But for specific sadhanas, you need to consult your guide.
And once we, let's say, select that sadhana for ourselves, or we have a specific sadhana chosen by our teacher, by our guide, how should we approach that sadhana? What is important here to remember for this sadhana to actually bear fruits for us?
Somebody once asked me, how should I discipline myself? I said, through discipline. So basically, whenever you speak of sadhana, one word comes to my mind: commitment. And many of us are commitment phobic, especially in modern times when there's so much distraction. Many of us are not confident about commitment. And at certain level also that we get bored by commitment. Majority of people coming to me and saying, I can't do my sadhana, they say it is boring. Now the thing is, it's not sadhana's job to entertain you. Sadhana doesn't exist to entertain you. Just like that's why I gave the analogy of medicine. That's why I say bitter pill, swallow the bitter pill, right? So it's not, medicine's job is to cure your ailment. Medicine's job is not to satisfy the demands of your tongue. So we have to understand that sadhana is something that is going to help us come out of a psychosomatic state that is deeply unsettling. So it's a long-term goal. So we need to commit. Now, the journey of commitment is not a straight linear path. You'll commit, then you will not commit, then you'll hate yourself, then you'll commit again, then something will happen, then you will not commit, and then suddenly you'll do something else. And then one has to go through all that to ultimately come to a very effortless state of doing sadhana. So it's like a growth process. It's all about commitment. It's like you say, oh, I'm committing to that person and then we'll get married. Yeah, I mean, what will that commitment bring up? We don't know, but still we commit. Right? Oh, I'm married to that person. It says something about commitment. Now, after marriage, maybe your life becomes even more complicated. But that commitment, going through life with your partner, sticking around, also teaches you. So it's really, sadhana is your commitment to your self within to become a better self.
Yeah. I'm just speaking of my personal experience here, that when I joined a teacher training a few years back, we spoke about sadhana, and sadhana being a asana-based practice, because we have to, do the practice so that we can teach. But that, to be honest, didn't stick true for me, because I just didn't have the commitment to show up on the mat and do the asana practice every day. But when we started mentorship, you and I decided that I wanted to do a sadhana that is completely different, that is beyond yoga asana postures. And strangely, when I set my intention, I never stopped since. So I am wondering here that, does it, like you kind of mentioned already, that this is a non-linear process and it takes a few trial and errors to find your sadhana.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it comes the picture of the teacher, because you trust the teacher, you have faith in the teacher, and the teacher mirrors you in a way that it gives you accountability in some ways.
Yes.
And hope as well. And that creates the fire, the drive in me to want to do my sadhana well and to commit to myself as well.
Absolutely. So it's not just one-way commitment. When you have a teacher, it's not just a one-way commitment. It's a double-way commitment. Whatever, if you say God is my guru, fine, still God will give you whatever it takes to develop you as a seeker. But you are absolutely right about what you said, is that now in the modern popular understanding, people enter the house of yoga, as I call it, through the doors of asana. And many of us are not so into physicality. So they have to push themselves to get into the physical aspects just to identify themselves as yoga practitioner, which I don't think is required. If you look at the traditional framework of yoga, it's not a yoga house with one door. It is yoga house with multiple doors. Some people enter yoga through mantra. Some people enter yoga through pranic processes. Some people enter yoga through bhakti. Some people enter yoga through seva, some people enter yoga through charity. So there are many ways to come on the path of yoga. In modern understanding, we only know one entrance, that is through asana. And then what we say that no, asana is so important. Everybody has to do asana because ultimately we are physical beings and all that. Yeah, in a way, yes, but not really. Like, honestly, if you've been to India, you see people around, you will find them highly spiritual, highly faith-based in God, in universal consciousness. They don't do asanas. Bhakti yogis did not do asana in a traditional sense. I mean, they can do. It's not like they cannot do or should not do, but they can do. But that was not there. There's so many scriptures, Narada Bhakti Sutra and all that. Whole Bhagavad Gita does not talk about posture practice, but it is the book of yoga. It is a book of yogic self-realization. So it will help if you approach a teacher and the teacher gets to know you, understand your personality, proclivity, what in Sanskrit is called as swabhava. And then your swabhava and your sadhana should match. Then only it becomes joyful. Right? It's like if you are artistic person, you don't enjoy number crunching, but because of family pressure, you have to become an accountant. You will do that job, fine, but you will not enjoy that job because your mind and heart is always with colors and figures and shapes and textures, and here you are crunching numbers, balancing balance sheets. Same way, if your sadhana is aligned with your swabhava, it helps a lot to sustain it, to enjoy it. Otherwise, it becomes like a regime.
And once we commit to that practice, whether prescribed by mentor or chosen by ourselves, we commit to it through a prolonged period of time. Does it ever change? Does it ever get refined? Does it need to change?
You mean what will change in you?
No, would the sadhana actually be different? Or would sadhana, the practice, the techniques would be a lifelong thing that is always the same? Or would it eventually change at certain points in time?
Yeah. Sadhana will change till you come to what I call as bare essential sadhana. So even the process of sadhana is you start with more and then simplify till you come to basic one or two practices, and that's enough for you. So sadhana will refine you and your refinement will refine the sadhana till you come to a state where you just are left with just a few techniques, not even few, one or two maximum. And it's a nice process because at that level, then you don't feel guilty. Oh, I missed my sadhana. No, I did not do. No. So that's also gradual refinement process.
Over years of practice.
Over years of dedication, yes. Because right now you may need so many things. As your body, mind becomes resilient, you require less practices, right? I mean, it's like you had a fracture, and so you broke your bone, and then you went to the doctor, and the doctor had a plaster and a sling, and then gave you a walking stick. Now you need all these three to help you move, and gradually, as you become stronger, walking stick goes away, then the sling goes away, and the plaster goes away, and now you're free. But the doctor says, hey, keep doing those exercises, okay? Because ultimately inside you have a broken bone. So you just left with the basic practices to keep the bone health. Otherwise, you don't need a walking stick anymore. You don't need a sling. You don't need a plaster because now you're much better. It's like,
I remember you mentioned once that to keep your sadhana simple, lean and simple, so that you can, simplify your life to
yeah,
simplify.
absolutely. With sadhana, your mind will become calmer. When the mind becomes calmer, the life will become simpler. When the life will become simpler, your sadhanas will also be simpler. And this is a very radical point that I'm giving you, because in our commercial yogic narrative, this will not be told much, because things are sold and everything is monetized. So people, the business of yoga wants us to stay dependent on newer sadhanas. So less is more will not be the slogan of commercial yogic narrative, but less is more is the main idea of traditional yogic understanding. And this is why yoga is called a nivritti marga. Nivritti marga means path of withdrawal, path of reduction, path of refinement. Gradually, you keep easing things, you keep dropping things, you keep simplifying things that way.
We talked already about the path of a seeker and developing that studentship and entering into committing to our sadhana. And how does this sadhana help us find or stabilize the mind in a long run? If you can talk a little bit more about that, about stabilizing the mind and finding that stability within ourselves for everyday life.
The first level at which sadhana works is that when you do something every day with joy, with commitment, your mind gets a break from running like a headless chicken everywhere. Whatever it is, even if you sit with your cup of tea or coffee 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening for next 10 years, that act, that regularity will have its benefits on your mind body complex. So basically, the first level at which sadhana works is when you hold back everything else to go on your mat, to do your asana or pranayam or sit by your altar or whatever. It gives you a realization that my life is not all about fight and flight. There is another aspect of me which can sit quietly. There is another dimension of me that is gradually working towards something bigger, something higher, something more profound than my regular transactional reality is. That itself is like you telling yourself there are more important things in life than what you're running around for. And that is a good reminder for your mind to tell you that, yeah, there is more to you than the money problems and the relationship issues, than your yoga teacher posting on Instagram and all this. That's a very good reminder that there is much more to me than what I do. Gradually, knowing that becomes your primary pursuit. Yeah, I will do actions, but who is the doer? Otherwise, what happens is if you go and look on the streets, people are so much into the doing, they don't have time, awareness, or privilege to even ask who is the doer. If you catch somebody who is rushing, they will not like that you catch them. But secondly, if somebody is running for a train and you catch them and say, but who is the runner? They will not like it. They'll think you're mad. They'll run. right? So, but we do it as spiritual seekers, we do that. And sitting quietly for 20 minutes every day makes your mind move towards that direction that, yeah, I'm super busy 23 and a half hours a day, but that half hour I just sit quietly and do my thing. Who is the my? Like this, gradually your focus of mental allocation changes, and then your direction changes. You're like, yeah, I want to know who this is that shows up on the mat every day. Am I more than my hamstring muscle? Am I more than my busy mind? And then you seek teachers for deeper aspects, and you read philosophy, you know, then you want to be associated with like-minded people. All this is a beautiful organic process that happens, but it will not happen unless you are grounded in sadhana. When you're grounded in sadhana, it happens organically and authentically. If you're not grounded in sadhana, you will be like, everybody's talking about community these days, I should find a community. That's not how it works authentically. Authentically, how it will work when through your growth process, you have come to a realization, I need to be in a company of like-minded people now. That will be authentic rather than everybody's making communities, I will also make a community. Very, very different approaches to creating community.
Yeah, definitely. I think personally for me, sadhana is also a daily reminder to show up for myself first, being that all of us have so many roles to play.
Yeah.
And every day it's a check-in of my state of mind.
Beautiful.
Because doing the sadhana daily could give you different experience, even though it's the same repetitive action and doing. But the experience would tell me where I am in terms of, am I fighting, flighting, am I stable, am I balanced? So it gives me a lot of insights as well.
Yeah, definitely. I see it as a mirror to myself and to my current state. I really like this comparison. And sometimes you can also see that in other activities in life. Some expands out from this, and we can see our tendencies, or we can observe ourselves in different situations, just like we did half an hour ago during our sadhana. So it's very beautiful commitment that just bears fruit to every single aspect of our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing so openly with us. Anything that we would like to follow up in terms of sadhana?
Do your sadhana.
Do your sadhana.
Yeah.
Do your sadhana. And at the end, as we are slowly wrapping up, we have for you a question that we ask to all of our guests.
Okay.
If you can share your perspective on heart-centered living and what it means to you.
For me, heart-centered living means living out of my own personal authenticity. And how does that authenticity look? It is calm and clear. For me, heart, and I have made a video on this on my YouTube channel, I think 6-7 years ago. For me, there is no difference between heart and mind. For me, a calm, centered, refined state of mind is the so-called spiritual heart. So it's not about, figuratively you can say, it's a mind and heart crisis. But basically a mind and heart crisis is just crisis of a mind that does not know what to choose between this and this or that. So I love the name of your podcast and your community, because heart is the place that we need to be in. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am seated in the hearts of all beings. Why is Krishna sitting in the heart and not in the knee or nose or somewhere, right? Why? Because that's the seat. That's the heart is where you feel love. Heart is where you feel pain. Heart is where you feel joy. It's not just a physical organ. It's literally the seat of your being, the seat of your mind. That's why even neurologically, when your mind is quiet, your heart rate is normal. When your mind is agitated, your heart rate is all over the place. So heart and mind are spectrum. I would say mind is the subtle side of the heart and the heart is the gross side of the mind. When your mind is calm and centered and clear, your heart just flourishes. And so just to take on your name, everybody should do, or everybody should live from their heart space. So thank you for, through your name, reminding all of us to live out of our hearts. Because mind space is infinite. Understand? Mind space is infinite. Heart space is singular.
Wow. I like that.
That's a good point. I like it.
Well, thank you very much for being here. And our last question for you is that what are your teaching plans this year? How can people come to you and learn more about yoga?
My teaching plans are still in pipeline.
Okay, the secrecy, keeping it hush hush.
They will be released. So if they want to keep in touch or something, they can follow me on Instagram, because that's where I put most of my stuff. So
You already
yeah,
made the yoga for householders.
yes, that will be
Yeah.
posted, or my YouTube channel. Now what I'm doing is I'm transferring my YouTube channel content into podcast. So I also have a podcast. So yeah, so there's some stuff out there. That's it really.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a big boost for me, a huge validation for me to come on your podcast. I was really waiting for this. I asked Candice, what do I have to work on to qualify to come on your podcast? And she told me, just be patient. Your time will come. And I'm like, okay. So thank you for having me. Really means a lot. And you both are doing a beautiful job.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for agreeing to join us. And it's been a wonderful conversation. And I believe we will invite you again and again, because the themes that we would love to talk with you about, or the topics that we would love to explore with you, there are a few more.
Yeah.
Now that we have,
I'm looking forward. Yes.
yeah, now that we have started the ball rolling, you don't know what you have signed up for.
Oh, I'm ready to roll with you. So
Thank you, Prasad.
thank you so much.